1 in 3 adults over age 50 will have a hip fracture if their bone density is low enough. And they'll die within 12 months of that. Is all the testosterone converting into dihydrotestosterone, which is what causes the hair loss. Strong social relationships is consistently ranked above everything else in terms of longevity. Everything else. Trehalose versus erythritol versus monk fruit versus allulose. For those of you guys who don't.
Welcome to our Q&A highlights. Q&A sessions are recorded every month, and our enhanced members get an exclusive opportunity to ask questions from one of cellular medicine's brightest minds, Dr. Elizabeth Yurth. Get a chance to ask your questions by becoming our enhanced member at bli.academy/memberships. You also get access to our content library full of tips, articles, videos, lectures, previous live Q&A sessions, and more.
So what would be my sort of 3 things we don't think about as much? Number 1, social connections. Strong social relationships is consistently ranked above everything else in terms of longevity. Everything else. You can have everything, do everything right, and if you're isolated and not doing fun things with your friends and enjoying life, then probably it doesn't matter. This came up so much higher than everything else. So I really want you guys to remember that, because I think sometimes we get so caught in our, our strict lifestyles. I gotta go exercise, I gotta do this, I can't go out and eat because I don't eat any of these foods. You've got to maintain social connections. And these are regular, meaningful social interactions. And for those of you who are working from home, we're fortunate. We come to an office where we're really close and we have social interactions every day. But those of you who don't, you've got to make an effort to find some place where you're interacting with other people. And not just 1 or 2 other people, but a group of other people who all have different opinions, who are all stimulating in different ways. The other thing is time and nature. So for those of you who live in cities, I was recently in New York City, and besides Central Park, I'm like, God, there's just no trees, right? And so you really have to spend time outdoors in green spaces. You have to be around greenery, trees. That's so important. So that whole piece of just being around green trees, so critical to health. Lowers cortisol, improves blood pressure, and lowers inflammatory markers. And then the last one is purpose and meaning. So once you lose purpose and meaning, and I saw this like in my dad, he was a caretaker, and when he felt like he wasn't needed anymore, he really lost a lot of his enthusiasm to live. So if you have to continue to have purpose and meaning. And that, I think, is hard because people start to get into their 80s and things, and sort of people don't value them anymore. So I'm always encouraging that, hire people. I think the best employees are in their 80s because they're eager to work and they're receptive and they show up every day. So I really think we need to help our older population to work and to keep doing productive things. We can't, once you retire and you stop doing productive things, there's a big decline in health. So you really have to keep looking for productive things that you can do. And those, I think, are the 3 most important things, and they get so overlooked when you talk about all this longevity stuff. Trehalose versus erythritol versus monk fruit versus allulose. So for those of you guys who don't know, these are all sugar alternatives, and they're all kind of nice sugar alternatives, right? Unlike our things like sucrose or these NutraSweet, those things are not healthy and create a lot of problems. But these are all actually healthy alternatives to sugar. Which is the best? They all have kind of their own benefits. Trehalose is my favorite because it has significant neuroprotective properties. So it actually prevents neurodegenerative disease, enhances autophagy. It's basically a natural disaccharide. It's 2 glucose molecules put together, but actually can cross the blood-brain barrier. So there's some evidence of it helping with dementias, Parkinson's disease. It's very protective against cell stress. It also blocks the glycemic impact of carbohydrates. So what people do is drink like a little lemon water with trehalose before they're going to eat a carbohydrate, so it blunts the impact of that carbohydrate. It's about half the sweetness of regular sugar, so that's one of its problems, is it's not nearly as sweet as sugar, so you have to use more, but more is probably better from an overall health perspective. Erythritol is great, 0 glycemic impact, has anti-inflammatory properties, has some good properties for the gut microbiome. Its downside seems to be a lot of people actually get GI distress from it. And the same is true about allulose. Allulose is a great sugar as well, but you get people who have GI effects. Monk fruit, another option, really well tolerated. It does have a little bit more caloric impact, but not significantly. So it's a nice option because its taste is really good. It's actually sweeter than sugar, so you can actually use less of it. Erythritol too is sweeter than sugar. So first, let's understand hair loss in young men, but in all of us. Hair loss is typically in men, male pattern baldness. It's androgenic. So it's androgenic alopecia. So it's both genetic and hormonal. So first of all, you want to look at the cause. And so you want to get labs and you want to see what are testosterone levels, what are DHT levels, is all the testosterone converting into dihydrotestosterone, which is what causes the hair loss. So they have a big conversion to DHT. What about thyroid, right? Could it be simply like low thyroid or nutritional deficiencies? We're seeing a lot of nutritional deficiencies, partly since COVID because of the gut's been messed up, but partly simply because of diet. So basically, you've got to look at nutritional deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, important. Now, what treatments? Do I hate finasteride? Well, finasteride has some problems, right? So finasteride is what's called a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, and that blocks the conversion of testosterone to DHT. So that's great because if you block DHT, you will not lose your hair. It's DHT that's responsible for the hair loss. The problem is that DHT is also very anabolic, and it's also responsible for a lot of the other things you're taking testosterone or have testosterone for, and that is muscle, right? So when you block DHT too much, you're not going to have any of the benefits of the testosterone. And the other problem is something called post-finasteride syndrome. So, we had a kid who had this, and it was horrible. And, basically what happens is that there's this persistent sexual and neurological and physical symptoms, even after stopping the finasteride, that can be permanent. And it appears to be a neurosteroid alteration that's occurred because of finasteride. So probably certain genetic people are more prone to this, right? So it remains poorly understood and difficult to treat, but it's a fear, right? That said, can you still use finasteride? Yes, but you want to use it in very low dose. You want to intermittently use it. So you want to take time off of it or maybe use it every other day, not every day, right? So you're talking about a tiny dose that's used judiciously. And that way you can sometimes get the best of both worlds without losing the hair and with still getting the anabolic effects of the DHT. Please, guys, do not underestimate how important osteoporosis is to address. You really have got to address this. It is a killer. It does not bode well for you if you have loss of bone. If you look at adults, 1 in 3 adults over age 50 will have a hip fracture if their bone density is low enough, and they'll die within 12 months of that. So a third of those people who have a hip fracture will actually die within 12 months. So, this is a tragic disease that should be addressed before it ever gets to this extreme. So number one, you need to diagnose it. So number one, make sure that you are getting a DEXA scan as one of your baseline studies, and that is somewhere around perimenopause, so probably around 40, that you at least need to start looking at this, right? Or if you have a strong family history, potentially even earlier than that. Or if your periods are getting irregular in your 30s, you may need to do that. Or if you are an athlete and never had normal periods, or if you're somebody who diets all the time, those are people who should get a DEXA scan even earlier. Okay, but you need to have it done. You need to know what your bone density is. So, remember, people who are at high risk, if you're over the age of 50, if you're female, if you have a family history, if you're skinny, if you're small, thin, if you're Caucasian or Asian, those are all high risks. And then diet is a controllable risk factor. Drinking alcohol is a controllable risk factor. Not eating enough fruits and vegetables, cigarette smoking, those are all things you can control. So, all right, Tina also asks, what's exciting and new in the world of longevity? I think, Tina, honestly, if I were to say anything, it's that we need data, and we're seeing a lot more data accumulation. We're seeing a lot more money and interest being put into the world of longevity. Like Northwestern just launched this human longevity lab that's going to really investigate all the chronologic and biologic aging across different organ systems. So now this, these big institutions like Northwestern are starting to put some energy into testing this longevity. We never really had that before. We were making a lot of our guesses off, mice data, things like that. So now we're starting to see a lot more human data. And then I think the other thing we're going to start seeing is the emergence of sort of non-drug modalities that are working, and this is, quantum biology really, but it's using light and energy fields to change mitochondrial function, to repair DNA. So there's all these very cool things going on sort of in the quantum realm on what we can do with simply light or different energy fields that we can actually change health. So I think, some of the cool research in quantum, where we're not just taking another drug or another supplement, is going to be really interesting as we watch time go on. But I think the big thing is, and I belong to a really big longevity docs network, and we're doing a lot of our own research looking at these things. So we're getting a lot more human data, and that's going to be the key, what works, what doesn't. Mary says, I see many ads about pain relief patches that go by the name Signal Relief Patch or Kailo Pain Patch. Please advise. So these products typically claim to use electromagnetic or what they call neurotechnology to block pain signals. There's really no independent scientific literature about these. All the literature comes from company-sponsored sites. So I think most of the positive stuff comes from some testimonials. And, if it works for you. I actually tried this because I had a patient who loved it. And she said, oh, try these. They're amazing. It did nothing for me. And they are expensive. They're $100 to $150. So what I would say is, if you have the money and you want to try them, they do seem to anecdotally help some people. There's not much scientific evidence to support it, nor can the company really give me a really rational explanation of how nanocapacitors with micro antenna technology actually work. Let me tell you why I don't like methylene blue. And some of you guys have heard me say this. And I don't not like it. I think methylene blue can be really useful used appropriately. But you have to remember that methylene blue has a very significant effect on reducing nitric oxide. What is nitric oxide necessary for? Cardiovascular health. It's what dilates blood vessels. That's why, if you drink pre-workouts, they're all designed to increase nitric oxide, to get good blood flow. And what methylene blue does is it's a potent inhibitor of what's called nitric oxide synthase. So it blocks this what's called the guanylate cyclase pathway, but that's critical for nitric oxide's vasodilatory effects. So you're actually, yes, helping some things like revving up mitochondria, having some antimicrobial properties, but at what expense? At the expense of that you are likely creating a reduction in nitric oxide and potentially some cardiovascular risks. So you're going to see what will happen if I reduce nitric oxide. I'm going to see problems with blood pressure regulation. I'm going to see problems with platelet aggregation, problems with immune system and neuronal signaling. So you can't use methylene blue just willy-nilly. You have to use it judiciously and probably with things that help enhance nitric oxide while you're doing that, and not using it like every day like I'm seeing some people do. So I do use methylene blue. So don't get me wrong. I think it can be a very valuable tool done the right way and in the right hands. But you have to understand what you're doing. And the problem with things like methylene blue, which you can just buy online, is a lot of people are just doing it without the knowledge of all the other things it does.